Chapter 36, Second Year, Love and Marriage.
What are we coming to? No room for me, no fun for you. I think about a world to come where the books were found by the golden ones, written in pain, written in all by a puzzle man who questioned what we were here for. All the strangers came today, and it looks as though they're here to stay. Oh, you pretty things, don't you know you're driving your drivers insane?
Friday, 20th April, 1973. Sirius was on a roll. In the past week, he and James had changed the colour of all the Slytherin banners in the Great Hall, bright pink, enchanted the torches on the third floor to start sneezing whenever someone walked past, absolute chaos during passing periods, and plotted a new secret passage on the map. The switch was inside a suit of armour outside the Ravenclaw common room. James had threatened that they were going to have to seriously buckle down and focus on revising starting next Monday, but first they had decided to go round out the week with the prank involving a time delay spell and spitting tulips from the greenhouse. It was an unusually warm day, and most students were outside on the grounds enjoying the sunshine, leaving the halls relatively clear. Sirius ran through the empty corridors with an armful of flowers on his way to rendezvous James. They had timed everything precisely, and he couldn't be late. So, of course, he rounded the next corner and ran straight into Severus Snape. He skidded to a halt just before they collided, breathing hard. Snape wasn't alone. To Sirius's irritation, Regulus was walking right next to him. It was a side passage, narrow enough that the two boys standing next to each other took up most of the space. "Well, well," Severus sneered, eyeing the flowers in Sirius's hands. "What do we have here?" "Out of the way, Snivellus," Sirius said roughly, ignoring his brother. He couldn't risk trying to push past Snape. The flowers were delicate, and one wrong move could set them off. "What are you up to?" Snape narrowed his eyes. "Are those for your boyfriend, Potter?" Sirius flushed. Something about the way Snape said boyfriend made him nervous and uncomfortable. "Actually, they're for Evans," he shot back. "Remus told me they're her favourites. The two of them have been spending quite a bit of time together lately. Do you reckon she fancies—" "Shut up," Snape hissed, face gone white with rage. He whipped out his wand, pointing it menacingly at Sirius's face. He had obviously touched a nerve. "Oh, come on, Severus, just let it go," Regulus interceded, sounding almost bored. "Piss off, Reg, I don't need you to defend me," Sirius snapped, fumbling for his own wand as he tried to juggle the flowers. Snape let out a sharp bark of laughter. "As if he'd ever defend a blood traitor like you." Sirius didn't think much of the insult. He'd heard it plenty before, and he was more focused on somehow getting a dueling stance while still protecting his precious cargo, half distracted trying to calculate his remaining time before he missed his rendezvous with James. But Regulus stiffened. "What did you say?" His brother's voice was low and even. It sounded calm if you didn't know him well. "I said he's a filthy blood traitor," Snape snarled, glaring hatefully at Sirius. "Everyone knows he's the disgrace of the Black Legarico." Sirius watched, incredulous, as Snape's tongue began to swell and elongate, writhing out past his lips and physically tying itself into knots. Severus turned to stare at Regulus, shocked and horrified. The younger wizard slipped his wand back into his robes. "Keep my family's name out of your mouth," he said icily, "and in the future don't presume to discuss business that has nothing to do with you." Snape's eyes darted between the two brothers, gaze laced with hatred, but he had no choice but to turn and hurry towards the hospital wing as his tongue continued to writhe. Sirius watched him go, dumbfounded. After a moment he turned back to Reg. The two regarded each other warily. "I didn't need your help. I didn't do it for you." A pause, then, That was disgusting. Reggie's mouth tugged up on one side, a half smile. I learnt it from Narcissa. Of course you did. Reg nodded towards the flowers. Are those for a prank? Maybe. Sirius shifted, still not letting his guard down entirely. Why? His brother hesitated, looking down at the floor. For a moment the haughty expression slipped, and he looked as Sirius remembered him, bashful, earnest, and a little insecure. Look, Sirius. He spoke slowly, as if choosing the words carefully. I know this marauder stuff means a lot to you, but... He broke off, sighing in frustration. But what? But, look, could you just ease up a bit? Sirius huffed. Ease up? He raised an eyebrow. I'm serious, Reg said. It's not just about you anymore. Mum and Dad are really upset, and you keep making things worse. If you just stop being so stubborn. Sirius shook his head in disgust. I can't believe you're taking their side. I'm not taking their side. Reg was glaring at him like a kicked dog. You never listen to me. I'm trying to help you. Great. Feel free to volunteer to marry Narcissa for me. No, see, that's exactly my point. You act like the things you do only affect you, but they don't. Just once, could you consider that your actions might have consequences? Sirius glanced down at the flowers in his hands. He only had a few minutes left before they'd explode. At this point, he probably wouldn't make the rendezvous with James. The prank was already ruined. Look, Reg, I'm busy, and I'm already engaged against my will, so trust me when I say I've thought plenty about the consequences of my actions. This has been delightful as always, but I have to go. He started to walk past his brother, and Regulus made a frustrated noise in the back of his throat. There are worse things they can do to you, he muttered, almost under his breath. Sirius paused. What's that supposed to mean? Reg held his gaze for a moment, but then his eyes dropped to the floor. Nothing. No, go on. Do you know something? Did they say something to you? Regulus refused to meet his eye. He stared stubbornly at the floor, opening his mouth as if he were about to speak, and then closing it. Sirius searched his brother's face. What did they tell you? He asked again, and then, more quietly, what are they going to do? Reg just shook his head, turning away. That depends on what you do, he muttered. I've been trying to tell you that. Monday, 30th April, 1973. Moony, what are all these books for? James asked, tripping over a haphazardly tall pile stacked right in front of the door. Just some research, Remus said casually, nose buried in the pages of another book. Where have you been? Plotting. Sirius picked his way over to the scattered tomes as James bent down to try and restack them. Remus raised an eyebrow. Plotting? Map or mischief? Bit of both, Sirius grinned, and threw himself onto Remus's bed, picking up yet another book to examine the title. Wizard wedding rituals, he laughed. Who are you marrying, Moony? Not Evans. James will have to challenge you to a duel. I do not fancy Evans, James insisted. It was becoming a common refrain. He picked up the final book he had knocked over and placed it on top of the pile, taking a moment to scan the cover. Magical marriages? He pushed his glasses up his nose. Seriously, Remus, what's all this about? Remus gave a long-suffering sigh, setting the book down and rubbing his eyes. I'm trying to help you, he nudged Sirius with his foot. Someone's got to get you out of this stupid engagement. Sirius's stomach twisted. He hadn't realized that Remus was doing all this research for him. He covered his surprise with a scowl. Oi, I'm doing everything I can. Remus gave him a skeptical look. What are you doing? Haven't I had more detentions than anyone else this year? I must get a howler a week. And my lions. Don't forget my lions at the Quidditch match. Remus knotted his brow, perplexed. How is any of that supposed to help? I'm proving I'm not the marrying type. No offence, mate, James said, joining them on the bed. But I don't really think your lot care if you're not the marrying type. Exactly, Remus agreed. You're the heir. You have to marry another pureblood. And the Black family have a long history of intermarriage. Even your parents are cousins. Sirius shifted self-consciously. It felt weird hearing Remus speak so clinically about the situation, about his family. How do you know? I've been reading, Remus said, gesturing to the books as if it were obvious. There's loads of stuff in the library about your family. One of the oldest wizarding houses in Britain, traced all the way back to the Middle Ages, where the family seat was in Inverness in Scotland. I know all of this, Sirius interrupted, starting to feel a bit irritated. He didn't need Remus, of all people, to school him on his family history. He got enough of that from his bloody parents. Yeah, but did you know you aren't the first Black who wanted to get out of a marriage? Yeah, well, obviously Andromeda, though that was more that she did want to marry, only Ted was the wrong sort. Not just her. Lyra Black defied the family's wishes in 1901 to marry the Crabbe family, and Delphinius Black was supposed to marry his niece in 1750, but left her at the altar and married Fidelia Bulstrode. And your Uncle Alpha never married either, though there's no explanation. Yeah, we're not supposed to talk about him, Sirius interrupted again. I've heard my mother ranting about him, and I'm pretty sure he was a queer. Neither of the boys seemed to know what to say to that. After an awkward pause, My dad knew Alfred, James offered. Said he was an all-right bloke. He always seemed nice to me, Sirius shrugged. Left me his money and everything. Made sure no one else can touch it until I'm of age. Makes my parents furious, you know, that he didn't return all his cash to the family vault. So I have to give him credit for that, even if he was, well, whatever. He could hear his mother's voice echoing in his head. Absolutely vile, disgusting, impure, abandoning his family, shrinking his sacred duty to continue the Black line, just to debase and defile himself with— Remus cleared his throat. So anyway, it just goes to show that you can get out of that sort of thing. Only problem is, I can't find any good details on how they all got away. Don't bother, Sirius said darkly. Even if you did find out, none of them had my mother to contend with. You know what she's like. She's probably going to make us take the unbreakable vow. She wouldn't, James gasped. She'd do anything, Sirius said firmly. Remus ignored them, lost in thought and chewing on his lip. With the conversation effectively ended, James and Sirius both clambered over their own beds, a somber silence settling over the room. The truth was, Sirius had pretty much given up hope on getting out of the engagement. He'd been thinking a lot about the conversation with Reg, and he was sure that there was something his brother wasn't telling him, which only made him feel more powerless. He really had done everything he could do to get his parents to change their minds, to give up on him. If he'd done his best and it hadn't worked, what more could he possibly do? Thinking about it just made his thoughts spiral, remembering how helpless he was in the face of his parents' wrath, how outmatched in his futile battle for respect, freedom, the right to live his life as he saw fit, rather than dictated by years and years of ridiculous bloody traditions. Sirius wasn't even entirely sure what he was fighting for, which only made defying his family that much more exhausting. So, although a part of him was grateful to Remus for his efforts, and understood that his friend was just trying to help, the discussion of all his research mostly just made Sirius feel sick. He didn't want to think about engagements, or betrothal ceremonies, or marriage. He just wanted to enjoy his last few months at Hogwarts, pretending that nothing was ever going to change.